I remember hearing in past interviews and some posts that you've talked about radical acceptance and how you needed to sort of implement that, which I think you just touched on. And so I'm wondering if you can maybe share how that came about, and was that an intuitive process?
Yeah, so I'll take you back to that week in 2012 where the diagnosis came, because it was a sequence of events that was so quick that I just had to adapt really, really quickly. So I got a call the next day. That morning I'm still working on my law studies, doing my exam prep. They said, come back to the hospital. And I thought, they'd just tell me what it was and give me the medication. And they told me I had leukemia the next day. So I was hospitalized straight away. I couldn't go home and, pack my bag. I was literally hospitalized and taken up to my room, or the hospital room, and I stayed in that room for like 6 to 8 weeks, couldn't even leave the room. It was just so quick and so fast that I think the only way to get through it was really to accept what was happening. There was no merit in denying that future life for the moment was gone. And I really had to be very brave and deal with things quickly.
Hi, Envisionaires. Welcome to the Envisionaire podcast. This is the podcast where we envision living our best lives by exploring everyday topics related to health, wealth, and community. On today's episode, we have Lauren Murrell, who is the co-founder of BySarah London, a successful multi-award-winning skincare brand for stressed and sensitive skin, which has achieved b-corp certification, which, by the way, is an amazing accomplishment because businesses need to demonstrate that they have very high ethical standards in terms of how they treat their employees, charitability, supply chain practices, and ensuring they adhere to environmentally friendly and sustainable policies. So congratulations, BySarah London. I have been following Lauren's story on LinkedIn for the past 12 months when I, by chance, saw one of her posts which a colleague had commented on. In that post, Lauren shared very openly about her journey of overcoming acute myeloid leukemia, a blood cancer with a survival rate of 20% over 10 years ago. In that post, she also explained her journey following her recovery, where she went on to complete her law school studies and became a qualified lawyer working in London, then New York, and then eventually the Caribbean. She then returned to the UK, where her and her sister, Sarah, started their company BySarah London, using the same skincare formulations that her sister had originally developed to restore Lauren's sensitive skin that she had developed when she was in the hospital undergoing the treatments that helped to save her life. Over the last year, I've seen Lauren share not only her own personal story of overcoming adversity, but also overcoming the challenges that many entrepreneurs face. And she does so with so much positivity, and she is an inspiration to so many. As many of you know, the ethos of the podcast is about turning challenges into opportunities, which Lauren does so well. So I'm incredibly grateful to have her join the Envisionaire podcast today, where we can learn so much about her own journey, but also some of the life lessons that she's learned so far. So a very, very, very warm welcome to Lauren. Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Nicole, and for such a warm and generous and kind introduction as well. It's really sweet of you.
Well, I only speak the truth. So yeah, it's all true. So thank you. So Lauren, I gave an overview of your background, but I'd love for you to share your origin story, where you grew up, what your childhood was like, and your path into studying law. Did you always know you wanted to be a lawyer when you were a child, or even an entrepreneur?
Yeah, so I guess really my story that's really shaped me was just over 10 years ago, and that diagnosis of cancer. And up until that point, my path was very much, I wanted to be a lawyer. That was, really what I wanted to do. And that diagnosis came when I was actually in my final year of law school. So all of the hard work that you go through, all of the exams and the study and everything that came up to that moment, it was just such a shock to have that diagnosis, because that was what I wanted to do. I was really set on that career path. And for any of your listeners that have chosen a career path, which is very sort of set, there are stages you go through. You go to law school, you take your exams, you study. It's a real commitment. And that was what I wanted to do. But then, of course, this diagnosis came, and I very quickly had to let go of that dream temporarily and focus on the reality of a diagnosis that, as you mentioned, had a 20% chance of survival. So all of the lessons that I had learned in life up to that moment, I really had to, implement very quickly and make sure that I could do the best that I could with that diagnosis.
Yeah, absolutely. I know, I remember hearing in past interviews and some posts that you've talked about radical acceptance and how you needed to sort of implement that, which I think you just touched on. And I just wondered, and that obviously also the radical acceptance led to you intentionally cultivating a very positive mindset. And so I'm wondering if you can maybe share how that came about, and was that an intuitive process or something maybe you had been, taught in your childhood?
Yeah, so I'll take you back to that week in 2012 where the diagnosis came, because it was a sequence of events that was so quick that I just had to adapt really, really quickly. So I had a week where I had night sweats and fevers and fatigue and just completely unwell, completely out of sorts, to the extreme where we had to phone for an ambulance and take me to A&E because I was just really, really unwell. At A&E, they took some blood tests and they thought maybe it was scarlet fever or glandular fever. They really weren't sure what was going on with me. But at that point, I was actually phobic of needles. I would pass out, just regular blood tests. So it was a very stressful environment to be in, and to be having these words and sort of diseases bandied around. So they just took this blood test. They sent me home. I got a call the next day. That morning, I'm still working on my law studies, doing my exam prep. They said, come back to the hospital. And I thought, they'd just tell me what it was and give me the medication. And they told me I had leukemia the next day. So I was hospitalized straight away. I couldn't go home and, pack my bag. I was literally hospitalized and taken up to my room, or the hospital room. And I stayed in that room for like 6 to 8 weeks, couldn't even leave the room. It was just so quick and so fast that I think the only way to get through it was really to accept what was happening. There was no merit in denying that future life for the moment was gone. And I really had to be very brave and deal with things quickly. So I mentioned I was phobic of needles. A couple of days after that diagnosis, they fitted something called a Hickman line, which is tubing they insert into your chest cavity with like little cables that hang out, so they can pump the chemotherapy through that cabling rather than into your veins. So you don't have a pincushion for an arm. So all of a sudden I've got, this chest cavity with this kind of machinery hanging out, and just learning to adapt to my new body. Of course, my hair started to fall out, and then that was another thing to deal with. But I think in a strange way, because it happened so quickly, there was no time to be fearful or worry. It was, okay, today the chest cavity thing's happening. Tomorrow the chemotherapy starts. The day after that, Sarah's going to be tested to see if she's a potential match. And it was just relentless, the list of things that had to happen. So that sort of focused my mind of, okay, there's sort of a program to get through here. And then, of course, cultivating that environment around me, because the nature of that blood cancer, it completely destroys your immune system. So I couldn't have family and friends come and visit me with, bouquets of flowers and chocolates and cards. It wasn't that at all. I was completely cut off. And only my immediate family, so my sister, my mom, and my dad could visit. And even then they had to wear face masks and gloves and like plastic aprons. They couldn't come near me or touch me for fear of infection and for
Right.
fear of me ending up in the intensive care unit. So everything was just so heightened. And something that we did, and I remember Sarah being so much a part of this, was curating my hospital room. So posters on the wall, like nice blanket on my bed. And although I appreciated that future life was temporarily gone, I wasn't going to go back to law school anytime soon, it was to try and help me to keep remembering that there was life outside of these hospital walls, because of course my life had shrunk down so much. I was only 23, so young, just when you think your life is about to start, that it was all sort of taken away and shut down. So it was radical acceptance of this is my new reality, and not sort of fighting against it, but just, okay, this is happening today. What can we do in my room? And what can I do sort of for my own mental well-being? So something I did as well was I journaled on my laptop, and I just wrote and wrote and wrote every day. No one told me to do that. No one told me to put posters on the wall. It was just things that I felt intuitively would sort of help me. And I guess there's an element of control there, because so much was out of my control. I didn't have privacy anymore. Doctors and nurses coming in my room, all hours of the day, monitoring me. And it was just a little safe space on my computer where I would just type what was happening, what I was feeling. Not with the thought to look back at it and really do anything with it, but just a real moment to just process those thoughts. So yeah, those were the early weeks of February 2012.
Wow. I mean, that's incredible. And I mean, it's really interesting that intuitively you knew that maybe that practice of journaling was almost cathartic in some ways, of just processing and getting those feelings out. It also sounds, and I don't know if this is also that kind of radical acceptance. Do you think survival was also in it? That kind of just getting into survival mode? Because, like, for example, when my father, he passed away a couple of years ago, but his health declined very quickly within like about, I'm going to say 6 months before he passed. And it was like, because my parents aren't together, myself, my sister, we live in Europe, but we go back. And there was this element of survival mode. And everyone kept telling me, like, this obviously, no, I wasn't the one going through it, but they were like, oh, you're so strong. And I was like, I just don't know what other option we have. Like, we don't have any other option right now. We're in survival mode. I don't know if that also kind of factored into how you were feeling as well, just kind of day to day.
Well, I'm sorry to hear of the passing of your father. I can imagine that must have been a really, really difficult time for you. For me, when that diagnosis came, it's really hard to put into words, but I felt it was happening to me for a reason. I don't know why, but I just had this really strong sense that it was. And I wasn't fearful. It was just, this is what needs to happen next. And like this, as I said, like there was a plan, and things were happening all the time that I didn't feel so fearful. It was more actually, when the diagnosis came, I was so upset that I wouldn't be able to finish my degree and I wouldn't be able to start my job. That for me was so difficult to know that was gone. But that also became my motivation, because I was going to get better, and I was going to go back to law school, and I was going to start my career. And I did. So again, it sort of helped me that it came at the worst possible time you can imagine, because that was my motivation to just keep going and keep getting better and keep finding a way, no matter how much pain I was in or how awful it was. And my health, really did deteriorate over those months. February, March wasn't so bad. I was like, it's not horrendous. And then, of course, further treatment came. So the chemotherapy didn't work. And then I had total body irradiation, which is as horrendous as it sounds. And then eventually a life-saving transplant from my sister, Sarah, who had been tested in those early weeks and months to see if she might be a match, and a miracle that she was. And it was Sarah, my sister, that saved my life. So prior to that transplant, my health had just deteriorated so much. I was connected to a morphine pump, round the clock, syringing morphine into my own mouth to deal with the pain. So those days were a bit hazy. I certainly wasn't journaling in those moments. And that, I think, to your point, was pure survival, but also like pure grit, because they wanted at one point to insert a feeding tube into me because that's how bad things were getting. But I was so determined that that was not going to happen because I just thought the image of that was so awful. And I'd already lost so much control, but I just thought, I just can't, I just won't have that. So I forced myself to eat when my whole gastrointestinal tract was covered in ulcers. So it felt like 10,000 razor blades every time I tried to swallow, but I made myself do it and then filled in this food diary, which they made me fill in. And the nurses couldn't believe it that I was still eating and like getting through it. But I think there was just an innate determination to not be beaten and just to keep going. And of course, I had my sister there, my mum and my dad every day, and just support. That love and support, was everything. So somehow I found a way through, and thank God Sarah was that perfect match, because if it wasn't for her, I really might not be here talking to you today.
I mean, that's amazing. And obviously for Sarah to, is it what's the process for Sarah? Is it a surgery she has to go through as well?
Yeah, so for her, it was a procedure. I think there was like 5 or 6 hours where she was connected to a piece of machinery that took blood out, filtered the stem cells away, and then that was then transferred into me. So she was, conscious and awake, but obviously a lot riding on that moment and that procedure. So, yeah, a huge moment for Sarah, and so lucky that I have her.
Oh, it sounds like it. And it sounds like it almost like basically created this even stronger bond that you guys have as sisters.
Definitely, it really did, because Sarah was there every day, and we really did live that experience so much together as sisters. And
Hmm.
one of the consequences of going through chemotherapy, radiotherapy, and the transplant was my skin was completely ravaged. And all cancers are different, but particularly with a blood cancer, which of course is your whole body, the treatment was the whole body. So all of my skin was so sensitive and so fragile, and would just react to even many natural skincare ranges. So on top of everything else that I was going through, that was just so difficult. And Sarah, I really turned to her. She worked in the industry at the time, really understood skincare and skin health, and she started to formulate skincare at home for me, looking for the best natural plant oils that she could find, knowing that they have the really restorative benefit for particularly stressed skin.
Yeah.
So she would make them, after work at the weekend, and bring them for me to enjoy in hospital. And, I love them. I didn't think too much of it at the time, but how lucky am I to have a sister that not only saved my life, but my skin as well. So
Oh my
that was the
gosh.
very seeds of a business that we would create many years later.
Yes, absolutely. Oh my God, it brings tears to my eyes. How beautiful. Is she she's your older sister, right? Is
Yes,
that right?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Oh, big sis,
yeah.
Sarah. Yay. She's incredible. But also you with your sheer determination and grit, amazing. I mean, where did you find that sort of grit? Like when you said, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do the feeding tube. Like, is that coming from you inner? Like, is that something you, like your higher self is telling you, no?
Yeah, I think you can't teach that. I think you're either, in moments of extreme stress, you see a part of yourself that you often don't know is there. And I've been tested so many times in that way, and thank God I do have a strength to come back fighting. But also being on a hospital ward for so long, I did see other patients, and they just look so weak and unwell. And I just thought, in my own head, in some ways, I was still that 23-year-old, 9 months earlier at law school. I was like, I'm not that person. So it was a bit of a uh, coming to terms with mentally. I was not in the body that I was in some ways, because the body was so weak, so weak. but my mind was still so strong. So thankfully it was that way round and I could get myself through it.
Incredible. Incredible. Right. And then, so you were, how long were you in the hospital for before you were discharged?
The cancer that I had, it was really a story of two halves. So the relentlessness of weeks in hospital lasted best part of that year, really, 2012, from February to the end of the year, best part. And then, of course, you're sent home, but I needed so much care and so much attention because you've dealt with the cancer and then there's the collateral damage of having dealt with the cancer. And I had so many fevers that then sent me back to the hospital. I had vomiting every day for 3 months on, a reaction to some of the medication I was taking, 30 pills a day. Like, it was insane. It was just so intense. Still, even though I was at home, I, really needed the care of my family. When I did get home, I couldn't walk up the stairs. I couldn't sit up in a chair. So it was, another year really after that of just rebuilding the body back, rebuilding my mental strength as well, because I'd had chemo brain for so long where I would just stare at the wall and like not do very much because that's just the effect that the drugs had. So it was almost another year of rehabilitation, if you like, of, learning to get that strength back and trying to eat better again because all of your taste buds are destroyed with all of the treatments. So yeah, it's a very, very brutal type of cancer, very, very brutal, and the collateral damage is quite severe. So it was a very, very long process. So, even after those 2 years, when I eventually did start work, I was still going to the hospital, not that anyone really knew other than like HR and the people I'm working with, for further treatment. Because one of the side effects was I had to have so many blood transfusions that the ferritin levels, the iron levels in my blood became really high. So then they had to take the blood out. I would actually go, it's called a venesection, where they would take a bag of blood like out of my body. So then, of course, you feel so weak and like trying to recover from that. So it was a litany of treatments and hospital visits, several years after 2012 as well.
And then after that, then you started working, even though you were still getting
Yes,
the treatments. And then you're working in London. You qualified as a
yes.
lawyer there, which is amazing. So again, one adversity after the other. Just you're just smashing it, smashing it. And then how did you move to New York and the Caribbean?
Yeah, so when I was in hospital and still very much focused on the life that I hoped to live afterwards, I had two posters on my hospital wall. One was an abstract of New York, and the other was that, beautiful stereotypical image of the Caribbean with the palm tree and the hammock and the aquamarine water. So consciously and subconsciously, that's what I was shooting for at some point in the future. So when I
Amazing.
did get better, I did start work, which I was so excited about. That was my dream, that was my career path. So to start in London, it was great. I really enjoyed it. And the firm that I joined had several offices overseas, and there was an opportunity to do a rotation in the Manhattan office. So I jumped up and down, put my hands in the air, and said, "Me, please! I'd love to do it."
Yeah.
And the work that I was doing worked with the team opportunity in the States as well, so it was a perfect fit. So I moved there for 6 months, which was, an absolute dream come true because all of my independence had been taken away when I was in hospital. My life had become so small. So to then be in the Big Apple, meeting new people, have my own office, great views of the Hudson, and I was
Wow.
just living my best life. It was so much
Yes.
fun. I was working really hard, but
Yeah.
I was learning a lot and meeting great people and just feeling really inspired by the opportunity. So I look back on those 6 months very fondly, and it came at a really good time for me personally. So I did that, and then I came back to London. But my sense of wanderlust was, really sort of warming up here. So I then looked overseas, and as an English qualified lawyer, you can work in certain territories abroad. One of
Mm.
them being the British Virgin Islands. So I got a job in the Caribbean, working as a lawyer there, which again was just a complete dream come true to be somewhere that, it was paradise to be in that environment, to be so warm, to see the sunshine every day. And again, it just felt such a wholesome experience in so many ways. So yes, I moved there at the beginning of 2017. Again, living my best life, from the years that I'd had prior to that, it was just so far away from that hospital room that it was just wonderful. And everything was going really well, Nicole,
Yeah.
until a Category 5 hurricane hit the island, Hurricane Irma. That was in the September, and I was on the island when that happened and was seeking shelter in a house that was ripped apart by winds of 180 miles an hour. The doors came off, the windows were
Stop.
smashed in.
Oh
Yeah,
my
the furniture
gosh.
was thrown around like Lego. And I
Yikes.
really feared for my life, as you can imagine, with all of that
Yes.
happening.
Were you by
So
yourself or were you with people?
I was pretty new to the island, so I was with two other people, but I only met them once.
Oh
But
my
we
gosh.
created a lifelong bond after that experience of being trapped for hours while that hurricane
Wow.
went over. And then the geography of the island is, well, first of all, I wasn't in my home; I was staying with these people, so it was really hard to locate me because I lost internet connection, satellite connection for 5 days,
Yeah.
and friends and family couldn't find me. So my poor family really feared for the worst. And I had no way of getting, also, it's very, very mountainous island. I had no way of getting like down to the main road. There's many stories within this, but in a nutshell, I was eventually rescued from that house that I was sheltering in, and evacuated off the island. And yeah, it was the most horrendous, terrifying 5 days of survival, of trying to survive the hurricane and then life after the hurricane and the looting. And it was very scary, but eventually came back to the UK. Life in paradise was over. And I was really heartbroken because I really wanted to live that life, and it was very quickly taken away. So I was speaking with Sarah. Who else would I turn to but my best friend and my sister? And I said, what do I do now? Where do I go from here? And in the years before, Sarah had refined those skincare formulations that she had originally brought to me in hospital. And she was really keen to share those beyond just friends and family who had enjoyed them like I had. So we thought maybe there's a business here. Maybe we can just start together and share her formulations. And, we're back. There's two of us. Let's give it a go. And so that was the end of 2017, beginning of 2018. And, 6 years later, we're still going strong. And I can't believe how successful we've been. I can't believe how much fun it's been. I never thought I would be an entrepreneur, but I do have a saying that is live life as if everything is rigged in your favor. And I totally, totally believe that with this journey that I'm on now. The business, as you say, is a certified B Corporation. We've helped thousands of customers struggling with stressed and sensitive skin with our natural formulations. We're stocked with Sephora. We've been on This Morning. We've had a feature in the Times, and the accolades just keep on coming. So it's been an almighty journey. It's so much fun and incredibly rewarding now.
Well, and so how were the first few years when you actually launched? Because those are notoriously some of the hardest years, I think, for especially small businesses starting, right? How was that?
We didn't really start with a 5-year plan of this is, how we're going to scale the business. This is how we're going to grow. I came back from a place of heartbreak of, my life was over in paradise. What am I going to do next? So it was very much me just helping Sarah, literally bottling everything ourselves, going to the post office and very organically just seeing what if we do this, where does it go? Who might want to know more about what we're doing? Who can we share this with? And just starting to build relationships. So it was very, very organic. But I think that's helped us so much because we really have worn all of the hats in all of the departments in the business. So we've got to know it so, so well. We also know our strengths and weaknesses of ourselves and of each other so well. So it means that we've got faster, and the more that we've been able to achieve, the ambition of the business has grown as well. So it's come from such an authentic place that we've just had to learn so much as well, and try and find the best people we can to help us, which is part of the fun and the challenge as well. So very organic from the kitchen table, and we've created a really successful business. So for anyone that's listening that has an itch, has an idea, if you don't have that big 5-year plan, that's fine. Start small, like start where you are and just see where that goes. You'll learn a lot, and you'll pivot and you'll refine things. And we have structures and processes and plans and forecasts now, but you don't have to start that way. You'll get there eventually. Just follow your nose, follow your instinct, and try and find some great people along the way.
That's amazing. And what is the most challenging issue you think you have faced as an entrepreneur, and how did you overcome it?
In the early days, particularly, I had a lot of, I found it hard to call myself an entrepreneur. I still felt so much a lawyer. I still am. I still have that lawyer brain for sure, but it just felt, because I wasn't that kid at school selling sweets in the playground, which, is your typical entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And really, Sarah is the true entrepreneur. She is the product creator. And I really just support Sarah in her vision, and supporting the business ecosystem, as it were. So it took me a long time to get comfortable with that word. But I am comfortable with that now. But yeah, I think one of that was sort of an early, like, how do I describe who I am, what I do? So yeah, it took me a while to get over that one.
But okay, so it sounds like if I was going to give it a label, it's a little bit imposter syndrome. Is that something, maybe like that idea of saying entrepreneur but not really 100%? Is that
It's imposter syndrome because I'm a confident person. I'm confident in what I can do, and the business that we have. I think it was just, I didn't plan to be here. And I'm so much of a planned person that it sort of took me by surprise. This is what we're doing. This is the success that we've had. So I think it's more that it was a bit of a surprise. And like, how do I handle that? What do I label this? So I think that was it.
So I have a couple of friends, and I do know that there are listeners who are budding entrepreneurs, and I think the advice you gave them about just starting and just going and following their nose, and it can be a little bit messy. It doesn't have to be perfect, and everything perfectly set out. But there are people I know who have told me, how do I get over the imposter syndrome, and how do I get over the idea of stepping into myself and saying, yeah, I'm an entrepreneur, and I'm ready to put that hat on officially. What advice would you give them to get over that?
I guess acknowledge it. If it's something that's bubbling up for you, acknowledge it, like, write it down, journal about it, but don't get caught up on it. Just keep moving forward. Maybe that's just the ego talking and trying to put you back in your box. I don't know. But yeah, look outwards, and try and help people, connect with people, really understand what it is you're doing and why, because it is really, really hard building a business. I could have stayed in law, had a great paycheck, an easy life, but that's not what we're doing, and that's not what we're about. So you really got to understand why you're doing it. Why are you prepared to work 7 days a week? Why are you prepared to constantly firefight and troubleshoot all the time? You've got to love it. You've got to see the value in what you're doing. It's so important. And we get so much joy. The reviews that we've had from our customers, we've got thousands of 5-star reviews, not just saying how great our skincare is, but how it's transformed their sense of self, their emotional well-being, not wearing makeup for the first time in years because their skin is feeling so great. Like, that's incredible, absolutely incredible. So yeah, you've got to love what you do for sure.
Yeah, amazing. Great. Find the why, the purpose, and follow that.
Yes. Yeah.
What's the biggest life lesson that you can take away looking at all the adversity, because you've gone through some big things? What's the biggest life lesson that when you look back at that adversity?
I think it's my mantra: live life as if everything is rigged in your favor, because it's only a bad moment if you make it a bad moment. Otherwise, it's just the universe redirecting you all the time. So you've got to see it that way. Otherwise, you can just stop. And you don't want to stop. You've got to keep moving forward, even if it's really hard, even if you don't want to. But yes, try and see things to your advantage, and see how you can learn and how you can grow from it, because that's how you keep moving forward, and you've got to keep moving forward. That's key.
Amazing. Right, we're gonna go on to the final Envisioner questionnaire segment, and we're just gonna do a quick little rapid fire. So this is when we ask guests to look back at their past, present, and future. So looking back towards your past, if there's any advice you can give your 15-year-old self, what advice would it be and why?
Oh gosh. It will all work out fine in the end. Don't worry about those exams. You'll pass them. Life will be perfect. Don't worry.
Amazing, great. Reflecting in your present moment, if you could seek advice from anyone in the world, who would it be and why?
That's a good one. I have to say Bobby Brown. We won a mentoring competition with Bobby a couple of years ago now. And Sarah had a Zoom with her, and she was just so wonderful and inspiring and down to earth and great values, family. Yeah, just like great value alignment there. And I would
Amazing.
love to just spend the whole day with Bobby. That would be my dream.
Love it. Look, you are, I think, a very good manifester, so I have no doubt that that will happen
Bobby, if you're
soon.
listening, the next time you're in
Yeah,
New York, that's me.
yes, 100%. Bobby Brown, please. Amazing. All right. Looking forward, what's one goal you'd like to achieve in the next 5 years, either for yourself or for the business?
Oh gosh, so many goals, so many goals. I think this is personal and professional, just to help thousands more people, thousands and thousands more people with their skin, because we know people are struggling. They don't know what to use, they don't know who to turn to, and we can help. And I want them to know that we're here and we can help. So that's a big mission for us right now.
I love it. Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Lauren, for being on the Envisionaire podcast and for sharing so much about your story, but also how you turned life challenges into life's opportunities. You are an amazing inspiration for all of us. For those listening who want to connect with Lauren, you can connect with her on social media. Lauren, what's the best social media for people to connect with?
At BySarah London on Instagram, Facebook, and then bysarahlondon.com.
Amazing. And I obviously will also, I advocate everyone to check out their products, in particular the Hero Oil, which honestly has changed my life this year. It's the
Love
most
it.
amazing product that helped me. I was having this weird patchy dry skin. It was so weird, Lauren. And I don't know, but now I've started using it and my skin is like supple. And my husband, like recently, I've been like, babe, you have to try this. And he's like, oh, it's so nice. It smells so
Oh,
lovely. So we're big
love it.
fans. So everyone go to www.bysarahlondon.com, check out the Hero Oil and so many other products. They're going to help you. And I'll put all the information in the show notes. But thank you again, Lauren, for being on the Envisioner podcast. We are so grateful. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. Really enjoyed it.
If you want to see more videos like this, make sure you hit subscribe and check out this video here.